What is up, everyone? Today we're going to be going over the UFC 309 pay-per-view in Madison Square Garden and why I think it's a little bit underwhelming. I don't want to be one of those fans that, complain about every card, but for an MSG card, it is a little bit underwhelming. It's not as good as I thought, and I'll go into why. But so this is the card that they gave us. Jon Jones Stipe main event. Not the main event people were asking for. It's not a good main event. I don't care. Oh, well, it's Jon Jones, so he's going to sell well. It's got a great main event. It's the two GOATs. Yeah, get out of here. Don't want to see it. It's not the fight we wanted. It's a gimmick fight. Co-main event, not going to complain at all. Great event. Pretty much guaranteed finish. I know they made it 5 rounds. I don't see why. I don't think it goes past the first or second. Featured fight, Bo Nickel, Paul Craig. Decent fight, I don't mind that it's on the main card. Featured fight is kind of crazy. I was expecting it to open up the card until I saw what else is on the card. And then it says Natalia Silva on here, but apparently it's another Silva, and it was a typo, which is kind of insane. The Sphere, $16 million, Emmy Award winning, and they got like everything wrong for this because the next fight was Anthony Smith versus Dominic Reyes. And we'll get into that because that may not be happening. And then the featured prelim, Weidman versus Anders. Again, absolutely no one cares about that. Garbage fight, couldn't care less. And yeah, these are some other fights. Martinez versus McGee. A good fight, not complaining at all. I think that should arguably be on the main card above 2 of the other fights. You have some other prelims, Gall versus Burmese, Hardy versus Eduarda. Not good prelims, but it's whatever. It's probably going to be early prelims, so who cares? Krylov versus Asmat. It's interesting because I have a gut feeling that this fight isn't going to happen on this card. Because I don't know why they wouldn't announce it on the Twitter or on, like the actual card. Like, you're telling me there's 6 fights? Like, this should be the featured fight. I feel like this is the 3rd fight I'm most excited for. It's a great fight. I feel like this should be the featured fight. Nickel, Craig should be opening up the main card. I don't understand what the UFC is doing. I never do, clearly. But it's a good fight. I just have doubts that it's going to happen because I don't know why they haven't announced it. It should be on the main card, but it is what it is. Marcel also told us that it is Karine Silva that's fighting instead of Natalia Silva. Makes complete sense. But yeah, that makes sense. And then Smith versus Reyes, apparently not happening. I figured because they announced it for 310 in December. I was like, oh, they moved it up to 309. That's kind of weird, but it's whatever. But no, they made a mistake again, and it's going to be December 9th, which makes sense. I'm happy about. Because I know if they made that fight, I know that they would be like, oh, Jon Jones, he beat both of them. And it's like, yeah, well, no, he didn't. He got beat up by Reyes, and he took Smith to a decision. So, congrats. And everyone has beat these two. He didn't even beat him in impressive fashion. So I know they'd just be glazing Jon Jones. So I'm glad it's not on the card. I don't want to get too in-depth about this because I want to make a video more closer to the fight about Tom Aspinall and why he's not on the card and my thoughts about it. But obviously, I just wanted to include this on why it's not a great card, because usually for MSG, the main event is amazing. The main event is almost always amazing. I mean, recently, actually, I'll get into it, but Aspinall Jones, that's an MSG main event. Stipe Jones, not so much, but this is another just tragedy that's going on with the card. And I wanted to include this because a lot of people are like, oh, it's so funny. I feel like people that say like, oh man, you think that every card is going to have Jon Jones versus Conor McGregor, you're a casual, man. If you say the word casual, you're a casual. Look at these previous MSG cards. UFC 205. We have Conor McGregor becoming champ. Tyron Woodley, Wonder Boy, amazing fight. I think that was like one of the best fights of the year. And we have Joanna Jacek. I mean, we have 3 title fights. Then for 217, one of the best cards of all time. We have Bisping, GSP, Garbrandt, Dillashaw, Jacek again versus Rose. I mean, just 2 amazing cards. I mean, you compare that to this card, it's not even close. And then, you know, the UFC has dipped off in competition over the past few years. So these 2 aren't near the level of the other 2 cards. But in my personal opinion, I think the main card, at least, is still a step up. I mean, we had an amazing main event, Adesanya Pereira, the much anticipated fight. We had another title fight, but we had Zhang Weili finishing and getting her belt back, which was cool. We had Poirier Chandler, one of the best fights. You know, the other 2 fights, you know, weren't super hyped up, but still, Edgar's like retirement fight. Still a good card. I still think it's a little bit better than this card. And 295, I didn't even realize it. Looking at it now, I'm like, oh, this I think was better than 281, and it's way better than the card now. And this was supposed to have Stipe versus Jones, but we had Yuri versus Pereira, Pavlovich versus Aspinall, all 4 of those guys, all finishers. We had Andrade versus Dern, which was actually a good fight. We had BSD versus Matt Frivola, a great fight. We had Diego Lopez versus Sabatini. We had Steve Erceg on the prelims. We had Rebecca on the card, Jared Gordon on the early prelims. We had Joshua Van. This was a good card. I mean, there's no way you could tell me that this card isn't better than 309. No way. And yeah, I just feel like this represents the dip in quality of the UFC in the past few years. And it just feels like MSG every year gets a little bit worse every year for the past few years. And it's very disappointing. It's still, looking at the main card, even though I don't even know what the main card is because they messed up on 2 of the fights. If it is just Weidman and Anders and Martinez McGee on the main card, or just Anders and Weidman, and like they don't have Krylov and Asma on there, that's devastating. That's horrible. But yeah, these are my thoughts. I may do a card builder for 309, but I don't really see a point because I don't know how much I could save the card. Like, I can't do a card builder and be like, oh, I'm going to do Aspinall versus Jones. Like, they're not going to do that. You know, there's no point. But yeah, I just wanted to give my thoughts on the pay-per-view. I don't think it's bad, but it is a letdown, without a doubt. But yeah, that's it for me. And I also wanted to just say, isn't it crazy? I completely forget how to pronounce his name. But the Russian that's fighting Krylov, in his last fight where he knocked out Alonzo Menafield, I remember his post-fight speech. He was like, I don't want to fight on the prelims. I want to fight main card. And it's like, oh, sorry, dude. You can't fight on the main card. You know, Karine Silva, she's too big of a star. You know, just another thing that just bugged me. Unbelievable.